21st, 2025, a meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee for the Charleswood School. A note before we get started, we are conducting this meeting remotely in accordance with the governor's regulations. And so all votes that we take tonight will be taken in roll call fashion. Chris and Kyla, just remind me, since you're both here, who's the voting member?
I am.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'll quickly run through the agenda. Following our usual period of public comment, we will approve minutes, we will approve invoices, then we will review some updates to the technology budget for the Charleswood School, some updates from the Conservation Commission as it relates to road improvements. We'll do a review of roadway improvement, a butter mitigation approach. That's for the neighbors on Hayden Row who are impacted by the construction. We will review geothermal test well results, get a status update on the MSBA project funding agreement, and any other miscellaneous project updates that we have. So if there are no questions, we will move to our opportunity for public comment. I don't see anyone here, any members of the public, so we can go ahead and bypass that with the opportunity to come back to it if a member of the public does come and want to provide some comment. So next, we will be approving the minutes of the December 17th, 2024 ESBC meeting. Are there any questions or comments as it relates to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the minutes of December 17th, 2024.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Tiffany. I'm just arranging my Zoom windows so I can do an efficient vote process here. And as I said, we are roll call. So Mike.
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters.
Yes.
Tiffany.
Yes.
Jag Root.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so they are unanimous
Yes.
and so approved.
Is
Okay.
that 6 or 7?
That is 6.
Okay. I was right.
Okay. Next up, we have bills to pay. So we have 3 invoices in our packet. The first is for Vertex, invoice OPM 11633 in the amount of $33,333.33. And then we have our invoice for Perkins Eastman 095-421-00013 in the amount of $320,000, and an invoice for Local IQ New England in the amount of $113.61. Grand total on the invoice package for tonight is $353,446.94. Any questions or comments on the invoice package? Okay, hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Motion by Bill, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tiffany, and we are roll call vote again. Mike?
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters?
Yes.
Tiffany?
Yes.
Jag Root?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so those are unanimously approved. Susan, I will get the signed invoice package over to you tonight. Next up on our agenda, we move on to updates to the technology budget. Chris Eberly, I'm assuming I'm turning this over to you at this point.
Yeah, this is fairly straightforward. We met earlier last week with the team from Advance, as well as Pamperini, who's the security consultant. Prior to that, we had met with the AV consultant, and we discussed the technology that had previously been discussed for the project. So the AV that is incorporated into the construction documents, as well as the roster of projected technology purchases for the school's use as part of the separate technology budget, and the security related technology purchases, just as a final check as part of the construction documents process to make sure that all of the budget associated with those items that are being procured by the owner was still in line. We got an updated budget late today that I forgot to open before the meeting. But largely what we found was that we continue to be trending under budget. We had identified one item, $150,000 for head-end servers that initially we thought would be provided as part of the technology budget. And that was moved into the construction budget as part of the finalizing the equipment. And so currently we are projected to be at 1.6 million for the technology budget, which, if you bear with me 1 second, is I believe 150,000 or so under budget. Just trying to give you the right number between all my little windows. Yes, currently we have budgeted for technology 1.7 million, 1,721,515. That is the budget that has remained since it was approved at town meeting a little over a year ago. And the current calculation from the technology consultant is that we are looking at a budget of 1.6 or 1,626,271.50. That's obviously a budget, and procurement of that those products will occur in about the midpoint of construction, if not a little bit later. But we're trending about $100,000 under budget, so we continue to be in a good place overall from a budget standpoint. We'll find out the estimates for the project as a whole towards the end or the beginning of next month, and we'll be presenting that at the February meeting of the ESBC. And so overall, the budget remains in a healthy place in terms of the technology. Just a related update on the FF&E. We had spoken a couple of weeks or a couple of meetings ago about the potential for increasing the FF&E budget. David Broniger, the principal, just promoted him, had reviewed that information, and the three items that they were looking at to potentially include in the budget were all items that were related to classroom furniture. So as part of Perkins Eastman's finalizing the classroom layout with the teachers expressed a need for having individual teacher desks in addition to a podium, having a mobile mailbox within the room, and having a mobile bookshelf within the room at all three grade levels. It was something that was considered at one of, I forget whether it was the youngest grade level and moved to the others, or the oldest grade level and moved to the others. But after reviewing that with teachers and staff, he did want to recommend that that moves forward. We would recommend that we incorporate that into the planning for the FF&E, but we would keep the budget the same. As I shared previously, these are all budget numbers, so they are not necessarily reflective of what you're going to pay, but it's really a forecast of what you'll pay. So by incorporating that into the overall procurement package that moves forward, when those numbers come back, we can reconcile them. Given that so far technology is under budget and the construction has been up until now under budget, and the contingency appears to remain healthy at this point, we'd recommend that the ESBC incorporate that based on David's recommendation and just move forward when we do the FF&E procurement, which is likely to be 1.5 to 2 years from now.
Any questions about technology or FF&E? So I have one, Chris, you mentioned in the technology budget that those head-end servers moved to the construction budget. So like net, are we still that far under budget, or did we just move some of the expense to another line?
I will tell you in 3 weeks.
Okay,
I think that's the safest answer I can give you today.
okay, that's a fine
We
answer.
would anticipate that there would probably be a somewhat of a bump as a result of that, but I believe at last estimate, we were in the neighborhood of $1 million under budget.
Okay.
So I didn't anticipate that to move the needle. And if we were in a situation where suddenly we had made up for that $1 million, you would have the $100,000 from the technology budget that you could transfer over to cover that cost.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then I guess we can move on to road improvements, Conservation Committee updates.
Excuse me. So we have appeared before the Conservation Commission once in December, on December 17th. And at the early January meeting of the Conservation Commission, we continued. At that time, we were still waiting for meaningful information from the peer reviewers, and so it didn't make sense to reply at that time. We expect to appear at the Conservation Commission next Tuesday. I can send a meeting request once the agenda is set by the Conservation Commission, so everyone has the ability to join that meeting. That is regarding the street improvements that are separately permitted because they're essentially town right-of-way improvements as opposed to project-related improvements. And that's to address the traffic and the related work that occurs within the wetlands buffer zone that's in front of Marathon. We responded to all of the comments, and we anticipate that we will be seeking approval at that meeting. The one piece that we did resolve with the town is we had a discussion with the town based on a comment from the Conservation Commission that the Conservation Commission had requested that the project go into private land to remove an invasive species. After consulting with the DPW head, our response to the commission was that typical for right-of-way work, the DPW does not engage with private residents to move beyond that, and they deal with invasive species in the right-of-way per their vegetation management plan within town. So we're keeping that consistent with how the town has addressed that work in the past, and that is going to be our response to the Conservation Commission. We anticipate that they had asked one other item that's a potential scope add, just to make the committee aware. They had asked us to investigate the possibility of adding curbing in the widened lane area so that it would gather the runoff in a catch basin and then distribute it into pipe and then direct it into the wetland, as opposed to what's called country drainage, which would just have it run off the edge of the road into the wetland. So if we were to pursue such an option, that has the potential, or if we were required to pursue such an option, that has the potential to add $50,000 to the street improvement cost. And so that would be one of the points of discussion at the Concom next Tuesday. And that's all I had, Joan.
Okay.
Unless there are questions about that.
Any questions on that one? Chris, fair to say, when we had the discussion with DPW, they were not big fans of the curbing idea.
No, I think they
Yeah.
agreed with us that it was a lot of money for not much impact. And I believe that's the argument that the team will express to Concom, that it doesn't create a significant improvement in the situation for what is an added maintenance item and improved cost. If you got in a situation where the maintenance did not occur, it would back up into the roadway because you funneled it all at one location, and you're not getting a significant, I believe it has to do with, this is getting out of my subject area, but I believe it has to do with the amount of suspended solids that are diverted from going directly into the wetlands, as opposed to being caught in the catch basin and allowed to settle before they go into the wetlands. But my understanding is that some of the vegetation helps to filter some of that as well. So
Well, the good news is you're going a little bit outside your expertise there. I don't think there are a lot of people on this call who are in position to call you on it. So it sounded good.
That's
Any
what
other
they told me.
question? Any other questions on that and on that? So we'll get we'll just get a meeting invitation when we're on
Yeah,
the
once
agenda for
Once
Concom.
the Zoom link is posted and the agenda is
Yeah.
posted, which is usually Friday,
Okay.
I will try and get that out to the full committee as I have in the past.
And it's probably worth noting as well, if people haven't followed this, that the partially through Concom, but the town is doing a discussion and I believe a bit of a refresh on their vegetation management program anyway. So our response in terms of the control of the vegetation within the right of way should fit right into what the town is doing at the moment. Okay, next then we are on to mitigation approach.
So for this, we've been speaking with John and Mike, as they know, to try and identify the last couple of neighbors and also finalize what we would like to move forward in terms of a package of neighbor mitigations. Vertex is going to draft, I think, 4 letters to the remaining neighbors. Mike was able to get the addresses for us of those neighbors, and we'll reach out with we've tried to reach you in the past. We'd like to have a discussion with you about potential mitigations for the upcoming school construction, and we'll see how they respond. After the deadline passes for that, the thought would be that we would congregate all of the responses that we have so far with the other neighbors, try and meet with the neighbors we've already met with and review what we're proposing for those mitigations, and assuming a successful outcome from those meetings, we would bring that package back to the committee as a whole so that you could review it prior to the meeting and we could have an ESBC vote to incorporate it into the overall construction project. And
Any
if Mike or
questions?
John had anything to add.
I mean, I think the only thing I'd add is I think our efforts are being slightly complicated by the fact that several of the houses in that corridor have had for sale signs go up in the last few weeks. So obviously we're going to be talking to the current owners to try to do the mitigation work that we can. We obviously can't project what a future owner would be looking for in terms of mitigation, but we're obviously going to do everything we can as we would normally to just make sure that it is as unaffected as possible.
Yep.
Okay. It's a quiet group tonight. Maybe geothermal test wells will get us going, Chris.
I am gonna turn this one over to one Mr. Dan Colley.
It's not going to get you going.
Appreciate you setting expectations.
It isn't. I just don't see it. So we did the test, as you all know, we did the test wells. Report came back to the positive. We, at the end of the day, are going to have 116 wells. So it's 115 that'll be drilled with the project to come, and one that is there that was able to be incorporated into the work. So that's good news, because we at some points we weren't going to be able to get in there and it was going to be too far away, but it looks like we'll be using it. Those wells will be 550 feet deep instead of 600 feet, so a little bit less depth. But the engineer feels from the reports and from the data that's been gathered that that's going to be sufficient. That number of wells is sufficient not only to support the building, but your potential future additions as well. So you should be set up for any additions that you may need in the future, and we should see a little bit of savings from the reduced depths and the couple of wells that we aren't going to be drilling.
Okay. Questions on geothermal test wells?
Yeah, I had one. When is the bidding process for that work, and have you seen more entries into that field to maybe have some more competition?
That works, since we're chapter 149, it's all gonna be bid the same day. So it's not like Hopkins where it's a construction manager at risk where you're bidding, those things can be bid outside of the standard bidding practices. All this is gonna be bid day to one general contractor. And from what I know right now, there is only 3 players in that market. And I feel kind of confident that Skillings will end up drilling these.
Thank you.
It would be the same contractor we have over at Hopkins.
Their question.
Dan,
We're basing
Dan,
that just because this is a public meeting and I want to make sure that everybody is aware, we're basing that on the fact that we got pricing on Hopkins from Skillings compared to others, and it was very competitive, and Skillings performed the test well. So they may approach it more aggressively because they may feel more confident in the results that are available from their firsthand experience.
Let's see, Dan, I had a kind of just a more curiosity question. Geothermal well versus a residential well, is it similar maintenance and shelf life, and how does that work?
There's really zero maintenance. Once the pipe is in the ground and it's a closed system, so there's nothing to do.
Gotcha.
And theoretically, you wouldn't do any maintenance on it. And from what I understand, they could last up to 50 years.
So the biggest difference between a residential well, like a water well, and what we're installing with the geothermal well is that we're using a closed well. So we're not taking water out of the ground in the sense of like a residential well. What we're doing is we're taking a pipe and putting it deep in the ground and circulating water through that pipe. And so that allows for the heat transfer that will allow the heat pumps to move hot air on hot days into the well and heat from the well into cold rooms in the winter.
Got it. Thanks.
Other question? Okay, well, we got a little bit more activity on the geothermal test wells there, Dan.
Stand
So
corrected.
the next piece is the update on our project funding agreement with the MSBA.
Oh, this will get everybody excited.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is a big one.
So, as you all know, a condition of the project scope and budget agreement, which was the agreement that was signed at the end of feasibility after the town voted to approve the project and move it forward, required that we complete the MEPA process. As we reported last month, we completed the MEPA process at the end of November, early December, and we have since submitted to the MSBA a letter from town council stating that the MEPA process is complete, which fulfills that requirement of the project scope and budget agreement. The MSBA has accepted that letter, and we are told that they are drafting the project funding agreement at this time and expect to send it over soon to the town for review and execution. Project funding agreement is the mechanism that the MSBA uses to reimburse the town for project. So up until the end of feasibility, the town was getting relatively monthly reimbursement checks from, somewhat delayed because there's a verification process, from the MSBA for funds that were expended under the terms of the original feasibility agreement. When we moved into design, those reimbursements stopped until such time as the MEPA process was complete. With the execution of the project funding agreement, which we or could be received any day now for review and execution, that will restart the reimbursement process. I don't have a great benchmark for how long it will take between the execution of that agreement and moving into receiving reimbursement checks again, because the inclusion of the MEPA requirement in this is relatively new. So we don't really have a good benchmark to look at in terms of what the backlog of design fees will look like in terms of a reimbursement from the MSBA. But the hope is that within the coming months, the town will start receiving those checks again, and those checks will should be retroactive for all the costs up till this time. It's just a question of how quickly they move through the audit process at the MSBA.
Any questions on this one? Well, if there are no questions, I'll just use it as another opportunity to thank the, all of our partners, Vertex, Perkins Eastman, and all the subcontractors that they brought in. Managing the MIPA process from the committee side was far smoother than I expected it to be. And I think it's a result of all of you staying on top of things and really understanding and managing the process at a deep level. So we're very grateful for that. Last thing, do we have any miscellaneous project updates?
We do.
Okay.
So you should have all received from Chris Kenny a link to download the 90% CDs. So on schedule, Perkins Eastman transmitted to us the 90% CD documents. So to just refresh you with where we are in the process. Yeah. And 60% CDs and 90% CDs. So in the process of the 90% CDs, we're also reviewing them, both Vertex and their team and the commissioning agents for both building envelope and mechanicals. We've received all of the documents for everything except the street improvements, which have a little bit of lag because they're also in the permitting process. So we're looking to get some street improvement drawings to the estimators as well, just so that we can validate that cost as well. We expect to have the estimate reconciliation sometime around February 5th, and we'll follow that up with where that estimate ends up, which we'll share with you at our next meeting, which I do not have freshly written in front of me. It's somewhere in early February. That will be the last opportunity to review the drawings, review the scope that's on the drawings, and look at what is being provided on the drawings that will go to the general contractor and the filed subbidders for them to bid and the town to enter into an agreement on the construction, which is currently on schedule to occur in early May. So we would encourage anyone who's interested to take a look at those drawings there. There's a lot of them, and if they're very technical in nature at this point because we're approaching construction. But if you have any interest in what the scope that we're moving forward with a bid would be, this would be the opportunity that you have to review them. We're also reaching out to with that opportunity to others, like we're going to send a summarized version to the IT department and the director of technology at the school, so they can make sure that they're getting the right things in the right configuration, and trying to find as many opportunities as we can to catch issues that may come up. We're finalizing the contract with town council, which will be included in that next package. And we remain on schedule to be able to issue the drawings on time. The remaining milestones that we have internally would be we're going to schedule a time to sit with Perkins and work through between ourselves and Perkins the final logistics that will be included in the package that is issued to the general contractor. We are going to schedule a final walkthrough with the building inspector, where we can sort of walk through where the drawings ended up as a page turn, to make sure that he's aware of any issues and can ask any questions before we get to the building permit process. And there was one other thing that I was going to say, and it just fell out of my mind. Oh, and it's also our opportunity to check in and where the plumbing drawings. I know, Dan, you had spent some time having CES take a look at them, and I think I want to give just a quick update of where that stands in terms of the progress that was made there.
CES is another engineering firm that we hired to do a peer review. They looked at the drawings that have been done by the new team that Pristine Engineering has hired to replace the old team. And he reported that the They felt that they had come quite a long way from where they were before and had ultimately, right before the last set was issued, they had answered all the questions or at least incorporated everything that CES had asked them to. So it looks like they're back on track, and which is good. And I think when we get through this estimating cycle, we'll be able to ask the estimators, and we'll see what they think of it. I think they'll say that they think it's looking a lot better, and we're going to have CES do one more round at the 90% just to make sure that we get one more bite at this apple and correct many other corrections that need to be made, or any other engineering comments that need to be incorporated, or another set of eyes is on it.
Oh, and we had, as part of the sort of finalizing, we had a meeting with the commissioning agent and IDS to review controls and make sure that we were on track for incorporation of any comments that they had. And we'll likely have another final review with them once they have their comments done for the review of both the MEP and the building envelope.
Okay. Any questions on any of those updates? Okay. Hearing none, that concludes the business on the agenda tonight. And given that, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Jagroot. Roll call vote. Mike,
Yes, sir.
Chris Masters,
Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes.
Jagroot.
Yes.
Bill, you moved on me. You must have gone off camera
Second.
for a while. Bill, you're a yes? I think Bill might be on a bit of delay.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And I am a yes. So we are unanimously adjourned at 6:38 p.m. Thank you to HCAM for broadcasting, and everyone have a good evening.